What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we'll be joined by Andy Kamenetzky from Locked On Lakers to discuss the Lakers' rough start to the NBA season. Are the offensive woes for the Lakers more so because nobody on the roster can shoot the ball, or is it more so to do with the production out of guys like LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook? Speaking of Russell Westbrook, how do things look with Russell Westbrook coming off the Lakers bench? All of that coming up here in just a moment. But first, a quick message from our friends over at PrizePicks. Next game, how about Donovan Mitchell to score more than 26.5 points? What about LeBron James to have more than 7.5 rebounds? How about Nikola Jokic to have more than 8.5 assists? Look, how does PrizePicks work? What is it? How do you play? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you're going to win up to 10 times back on your money on any single entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, you name it. They've got you covered over at PrizePicks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that simple. They offer safe and very, very fast withdrawals. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Joining us now is Andy Kamenetzky from Locked On Lakers. You can follow on Twitter at Cam Brothers. Now, Andy, Lakers coming off their most recent loss against the now 8-1 Cleveland Cavaliers, a game where LA actually looked really good in the first half, kind of weathered this insane scoring output from, Darius Garland, from Donovan Mitchell. And then, I don't know, what happened that just caused it to all fall apart there in the second half?
Well, I mean, the offensive issues that they've had all season really, really started to pile up during the second half. The inability to make outside shots, starts making them a very predictable team to defend against, particularly in the second half where Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley weren't in foul trouble and you could have more of an interior presence. And even the way the Lakers we're playing well in the first half, and we're leading in the first half to a certain degree. It was unsustainable in the sense that they were really allowing Cleveland, in particular, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, to get to the line a lot. So, Cleveland's percentages from the field were bad, and, the Lakers deserve some credit for forcing bad shots, but they were allowing those two guards to have their ways overall, beyond the fact that those two were actually shooting well. They just didn't really capitalize, I think, in every way they could have. Both Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, like I said, got 3 fouls in the first half. So they really should have been able to find a way to just get to the paint at will, and I think build up even more of a cushion than they had going in the third quarter, because this is not a team that performs well in the third quarter this season and frankly the last few years. And just they're starting to enter a period, and Darvin Ham talked about this, where if the scoring isn't happening, you see their spirit start to dissipate some. And it makes sense because defense is the stick and points are supposed to be the carrot. You know what I mean? Like that's supposed to be your reward for really busting ass on defense. And when you don't get that reward with the shots not going down, it becomes very difficult to be a defense first team.
Yeah, you can look at the advanced numbers, and the Lakers are a top 5 defense right now. How much of that is that accurate? I mean, does it match the eye test with what we're seeing, like kind of on the court on a nightly basis, or is that like a deceptive top 5 ranking that's not like actually accurate?
I mean, look, I'm not going to pretend that I am either smart enough to understand like projected shot quality, how it gets broken down, or certainly I am not, I guess, motivated enough to go through all those numbers every single game and figure out exactly where the Lakers stand. But at their best, they play very active, disruptive defense. Anthony Davis, maybe not, has been at times, I think, the best defender defensive player in the game this season. I mean, there's been times where he's been an absolute wrecking machine. And I think everybody who's been in the rotation this season, including Russell Westbrook, because this is something he's caught a lot of criticism over. You would know this having covered him for a year. His focus defensively has been there. And he is, he's not perfect, but he's not been the naked, disinterested, problem on defense that he has in the past. I think they've been a good defensive team, but they've had a couple difficult matchups the last couple games. Utah is a weird team to scheme against because you kind of have to be aware of everybody, and they're such a new team. Like, you kind of have no idea what they're doing. Like, it takes usually a quarter of a season before you really understand, a team that new.
Yeah, what does the scouting report even look like against Utah? You're like, who are you scheming against? You're scheming against all five guys. What are you doing?
The scouting report is, when are they going to start tanking? Like, aren't they going to start tanking? Like, are they not aware of Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson? I think that's the scouting report. But, they've got a bunch of guys on that team who, if nothing else, would like to showcase themselves to get moved to a different team or playing for contracts or whatever. They need to start finding consistent offense that isn't just transition. Like, when the Lakers are running, when they're moving and LeBron's pushing pace, or especially Russell Westbrook's pushing pace, they can be a very difficult team to deal with. But when they get into a half court set or get forced into it, they really, really get sluggish. Their outside shooting becomes a real problem. And however good you think their defense is, they're not like bad boy Pistons or like 2004 Pistons or like the 2010 Lakers that won the championship, or even the 2020 Lakers that won the championship. They're not that good. And they don't have the type of personnel that, for example, could offset Patrick Beverley's absence in a game like this. He's dealing with a bug that's been going around the team. LeBron and AD may still be feeling the effects of it. But this was a game where I think Patrick Beverley's absence was pronounced because you've got two really dynamic guards to keep track of. But I think their defense is real and certainly better than I thought it would be. But their offense has just been a problem.
And a big part of that offense, when you look at some of the stats for this team, the shooting is just non-existent from anybody on this roster. At what point, if you're Darvin Ham, do you just look at the available guys and say, all right, Reeves, Matt Ryan, here, give them 30 plus minutes a night, because they're the only guys hitting anything offensively for this Lakers team?
Well, I mean, you can't give Matt Ryan 30 minutes a night because they will just hemorrhage points. And he's also somebody that he doesn't do anything but shoot from outside, and he's good, and he's earned his way into the rotation, and that's great. But, Russell Westbrook, frankly, 3 of 5 today from three. Maybe they should be drawing up a few more, out of bounds 3-point sequences for Russ. It can't be just one guy, and it certainly can't just be Matt Ryan. And like, Austin Reeves is going to get 20 to 30 minutes anyway. I mean, he regularly closes tight games. I'll tell you, a big issue that has gone under the radar with this team in terms of their offense, in terms of their outside shooting, because there's always so many other storylines with this team, is LeBron's jumper has been a problem, certainly from outside, but often from the mid-range as well. I mean, this was not necessarily one of those games. He was 13 to 23 overall. But LeBron is such a dynamic force for them and is supposed to be somebody that you have to account for basically everywhere on the floor. He's shooting in the 20s. I
actually had his numbers pulled up because I was looking at that as well. Kind of the concerns looking at his inefficient start to the season, at least going into, because, Basketball Reference didn't update in time. Shame on me, but going into Sunday, the Sunday afternoon matinee game against the Cavaliers, he was shooting 43% from the floor, 20% from long range. Those are his worst numbers since his rookie season.
To put that inefficiency in perspective, Jackson, on Saturday, I was just looking up some numbers just to sort of, just get an idea of the league in general, not even specifically looking for anything Lakers or LeBron. But I happened to notice, and this was going into Saturday's game, so maybe things changed a little bit, but I doubt that much. Of the top 20 scorers in the league, LeBron was ranked 18th. Nobody had a lower overall field goal percentage or 3-point percentage of the top 20 scorers in the league than LeBron. And only two players, Jaylen Brown and Anthony Edwards, at the time in the top 20, had lower PERs by ESPN's metrics. So it really reinforces how, by LeBron's standards, he just has been struggling to put together efficient offense. And that affects the entire team.
Last 5 games, Russ has been coming off the bench. This was an idea that Darvin Ham had, the realignment of Russ's role, if you will. Lakers are 2-3 in that stretch. They had the really, competitive first half against the Cavaliers, so maybe we'll say 2.5 good games. What has bringing Russ off the bench, kind of allowed this Lakers team to do? What has it done for the team?
Well, first of all, it allows LeBron and Russ to be staggered a bit more in ways that I think declutters the offense when they're together. It gives Russell Westbrook more ability to play like himself. He gets the ball more. He gets to run an offense more. Frankly, he gets to goose a second unit that just needed more scoring ability, needed more of a dynamic presence. I also think in a lot of ways, it just ripping the Band-Aid off this thing, because it was something that had been talked about for the entire offseason. And then heading into this season, there was the brief preseason game. Russ played 5 minutes off the bench and then hurt his hamstring. I think this was something that was hanging over everybody, sort of the, when is it going to happen? How's Russ going to react to it? And, Russ may be asking himself, how am I going to deal with this? What's this going to be like for me? I think in a lot of ways, it was just a relief to have this storyline just put to bed. He's coming off the bench now. That's his role. To Russ's credit, I think he's handled it very well. And I'll tell you, man, he's the last few games, and this is really strange because last year things got so toxic between Russ and LA fans. It became untenable for him to bring his family to games. Russ has become a fan favorite inside crypto. He went from being persona non grata in LA to dark horse candidate for mayoral race on Tuesday.
He was getting MVP chants during the Cavs game.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, Laker fans, they have a reputation for being entitled and spoiled and, one percenters in terms of their worldview of how basketball works. And all that is true, but they are very smart fans. Laker fans are much smarter about the game, and I think also their season than they get credit for. They're often seen as bandwagoners, and they're not. I think Laker fans really understand what Russ has done this year and the sacrifice that he sees himself making. And even if they feel like, dude, it's obvious you should be doing this, why were you even against it at all in the first place? I think they respect the fact that he's doing it, and he's doing it without any type of resistance. He seems to have bought in. And so far, so good. But it's a weird thing to say given how much focus has been on him. But right now, Russ is not one of the front problems on this team.
Will Russell Westbrook's sacrifice to come off the bench be worth it as this season moves along? Can the Lakers find a way to turn around their offensive struggles and get this thing back on track? Of course, you're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Lakers. Andy, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Anytime, man.